I never thought I would be explaining what a psilocybin retreat is using a 60 minutes video, but here we are. Let's go ahead, let's get into it. Hi everybody, my name is Jill. Welcome back to Journey Sage, and this is the channel where I talk about psychedelic assisted psychotherapy because I healed my childhood trauma-induced PTSD with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, very specifically MDMA therapy. And I was really excited to see a very recent piece on 60 Minutes where Anderson Cooper followed a group of veterans on a psilocybin retreat to document how they were working to heal their PTSD. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly how a retreat should go. And I realized the narration on the video was not explaining what was actually happening. So you know what? I'm going to do Anderson Cooper a solid here, which again, I never thought I would ever be saying. And I'm going to explain what was happening because I've been on a myriad of these kind of retreats, and I figured this is a great learning opportunity. I have to cheat because I have about 13 pictures from the video. The video is linked in the description box, so go ahead and check it out. I think it's a fabulous overview. And as somebody who freely shares her story, I don't have any issue with these folks who voluntarily shared their story. There's been a little bit of drama that, veterans shouldn't have to share their story for this treatment to be available. You know what? I think the more people who talk about things, the closer we're going to get to this being available for everybody. So I'm kind of excited. All right. So the very first, and I'm starting in chronological order how the video went. The very first thing you're going to see is a picture of a circle. When you're going on retreats, there's usually a virtual call because people are strangers. And so there's a virtual call or two to meet everybody because you're going to be going through a ceremony and, kind of have your subconscious wide open with these strangers. So it's nice to know who these people are, at least names to faces, before you meet in person. When you get there in person, these circles are very, very common. So this particular picture is a circle before the ceremony. Think of it as a preparation circle. It's the opportunity to share why you're there, what your intentions are, what your goals are, what your fears are. It's a very open, sharing, vulnerable place, and it sets the stage for the whole group to know that this is a safe place. You can be vulnerable, you can share, and usually these can take quite a long time because the rule is usually feel free, go ahead and share what you need to share. Now, secondly, there have been no retreats that I have gone on. There hasn't been extensive medical screening. And I've only been on one retreat where there wasn't an actual medical person on the premise. And that's because that retreat was actually, everybody on that retreat had already worked with that particular retreat leader before. So we were all healthy. We all knew what was going on. We had all worked with psilocybin before. But every single other retreat, there was a huge medical screening. Remember, I don't have any sort of psychosis in my family. I don't have any history of schizophrenia. I don't have any health issues that prevent me from using psychedelics. And usually there is somebody at the very beginning of a retreat to make sure your blood pressure is okay. This is pretty standard practice. So I was really glad to see that they were showing that part. You're usually not going to have a doctor or a nurse on site the whole time for a psilocybin retreat. Notice I'm being very specific with my wording there. So this aligns. Everybody was kind of cleared from the very beginning, and then the medical staff probably stepped aside. All right, and then let's move on to, all right, so the next part here, sorry, bangs got a little confused there. The next part was the saging. And so what's happening here is that when you have a more ceremonial kind of retreat versus a trauma specific, and usually when you're going on a retreat, it's more ceremonial, it's very customary to be saged first. And when you're saging a space, it's all about cleansing the area of negative space, opening up a space of healing. And it's an opportunity to just have the environment cleansed and have your senses, because the smoke kind of allows you to just kind of focus and be in the moment, the smell of the sage. And this kind of ceremony can vary. I've probably had about 3 different variations of the saging ceremony, and usually see how that person is kind of like out like this. The person doing the saging will actually kind of do the outline, and then you'll have to actually reverse and do the outline. If any of you have ever done a really fun moon ceremony, you'll very often get saged because you want to kind of have a brand new start for the new moon. I was an English major. I love moon ceremonies. They're just always a lot of fun. So that's what's happening there. People are being saged. And you'll also notice that people are wearing white. Now, there's lots and lots of different reasons why, oh my gosh, people are wearing white. What kind of symbolism? And yeah, there's a whole bunch of other things. I tend to look at it as a very practical thing. I once had a facilitator say to me, one of the reasons why we really encourage people to wear white is because that particular ceremony was at night, and via candlelight, it's a lot easier to see people if you're wearing a bright color or wearing white. But other people claim, purity, openness, things of that sort. You can feel free to read and research. Depending on the retreat, it can be a hard or fast rule about wearing white. I've never been on a retreat that was like, you have to wear it, but there are some that are really, really strict. All right, now, number 4, number 5, I have my little pictures numbered. These are the medicine folks who were running this retreat. Now, you'll notice that you have a man and a woman. Ceremonial retreats very commonly want to have the masculine and the feminine represented. Sometimes you need the feminine energy, sometimes you need the masculine energy. This is very common. It's also very common to have a good number of facilitators. I mean, usually there are way more facilitators, like an average of 2 to 3 people per facilitator. I think the maximum I've had is 5 people per facilitator, and that was because the people at the retreat were very experienced. There weren't any really newbies. So usually the ratio is pretty tight. I'm going to use it that way. But I also wanted to give you the image there, the medicine folks. It's a little bit of a mini altar. You'll see feathers. You'll see some ceremonial things for whatever that medicine person is bringing along. So this kind of imagery is very, very appropriate. And there is usually some sort of conversation before you take the medicine, before you take the psilocybin, and then sometimes maybe 10 or 15 minutes after. But that kind of varies in terms of which medicine person you're working with. I've had some where 10 or 15 minutes conversation after taking the medicine. I've had some that the music starts immediately after you take the medicine and you're right into the ceremony. So it really depends on where you are and what their process is. The next picture is the tea. I've had psilocybin served to me, literally eat the mushroom, which wasn't great, which is always where you get the message of, you're eating medicine. Medicine doesn't taste good, so you're eating mushrooms, doesn't taste good. I mean, unless you like dried mushrooms. And they usually are dried, because if you ate undried mushrooms, you'd be eating a ton of them. And they're dried, everything's condensed. But normally it's usually in the form of dark chocolate, or it's in the form of tea. So in this instance, you have a tea. Sometimes you'll hear the term lemon tech. They'll put a little bit of lemon in there to make the journey a little bit more, a little bit shorter in duration. I won't go into talking about that. If you want to understand that, just do a Google search for lemon tech. And I think from the color there that there's a good bit of lemon tech going on. And you'll also notice the little packets. They have probably measured out the dosage per person in the packets before they have put the mushrooms in the tea. That's pretty much standard practice. You work with who you individually talk to each participant in the ceremony. How deep did they want to go? What their experience level is? What other pharmaceuticals have they been on their lives? How old are they? All of those factors go into what a particular dose is. And by the way, there's no competition. There's no award for having a massive dose. There's no bragging rights, because everybody's body is different. And Like, somebody might need 5 grams or 8 grams to achieve what you might need at 3 grams. There's absolutely no bragging rights with taking a big dose. So get that out of your head. If that was in your head, get that out of your head. So you'll see those little packets that was probably measured out beforehand so that they could be precise with the T. And then what you have is folks laying down with their eye mask. They're in the tropics. I totally forget exactly where they were. I'm sorry. Wherever they were, psilocybin is legal. This is funny because, well, it's funny to me because no matter where I am, I'm never just laying on my back still. I'm always cuddled up on my side like I'm going to sleep. You can lay down however you want to lay down. It's usually a little mat. They usually keep you very close to the ground so that if you want to move around, you're not going to fall off of anywhere. So this is very common. It's also very common to be relatively close to each other so that a facilitator can get to you very closely. If in any situation you're like, I don't want to disturb other people on my journey, you usually in these situations, if you take your eye mask off and move slowly with the help of a facilitator, you can step away. Very rarely do I actually see that happening in very small ceremonies, but I have seen it in big ceremonies, people just kind of having to step away from the energy. But this is pretty common. You're laying down on a mat that has a little blanket, you've got a pillow, there's music playing. I love to take my little earbuds just in case I don't like the particular music. I'm cuddled up, but remember, they're taking one picture out of like 5 to 6 hours. So this is just one little snippet of time. Now, this picture I thought was really appropriate, and I thought it was kindly done. This particular participant had raised his hand asking for help from a facilitator, and that is standard. That's appropriate. That's wanted. If people are having a tough time during a journey, that's why the facilitators are there. That's why the ratio should be relatively small. It's very rare that everybody at one time in a journey runs into a rocky point. There's usually kind of ups and downs and things of that sort. So you don't need to have a one-to-one facilitator at a ceremonial retreat like this. But this person raised his hand. In the video I saw, he raised his hand. He needed a little bit of help. And this facilitator came over. And I'm going to guess, because I don't know, conversation was confidential, thank goodness they didn't air it. I'm going to guess there was either some words spoken or just his calming presence. A lot of times when you need some help and you kind of raise your hand, like it's just you need another person. You might need an empathetic witness. You might need to just ground yourself that this experience doesn't take over. It could be any variety of things. The most important thing to get from this picture, and of course I'm pointing here because that's where my computer is, but you're seeing the picture here, is that if you're in a ceremonial journey and you need some help, that's why the facilitators and the medicine people are there. Raise your hand and you'll get some help, and it's lovely. That's why they're there. That's why they're called to do this work. They want you to raise your hand. When I'm facilitating, that's why I'm there. I don't want you to suffer in silence. I want you to ask for some help. All right. The next, you'll notice that this particular ceremony had live music, and I'm not a music snob in any way, shape, or form. I've never been a music snob. A lot of times when you go to retreats in other parts of the world, they'll have live music, and I think it's lovely because the musicians can gauge how the journey is going, and sometimes they'll speed up the music, they'll slow it down, like they very much read the room. That isn't to say that folks who have recorded music aren't doing the very same thing. They just kind of take a moment to go through their playlist. They are also reading the room, but it's just lovely when you have somebody kind of playing and they take some breaks and they come back to it. And so, but this is what you'll find very often during a ceremonial psilocybin journey. And then this is after. I don't know how long after. I'm not sure if I remember that from the video. But the same way we had an opening preparation group session, it is very common to have a group integration session in addition to individual sessions with some of the facilitators. And that depends on the focus of the retreat. If it's more of a tourism kind of, spiritual healing, you might not get that one-on-one. If it's a retreat, a ceremonial retreat that's really focused on you healing and they have more facilitators, you'll probably have the opportunity for a one-on-one. It varies. You just have to look at the offering for that retreat. In this instance, what we now have is a group integration circle. They are probably talking about what they found most enlightening about the journeys. They are not doing trip reports. They're probably being very specific about something that they learned, something that they reframed, something valuable to the group, because if they're trip reports, they're really not particularly valuable. But these are very powerful bonding experiences. You're still your subconscious is wide open. You feel very close to the people you just had the ceremony with. They are lovely, lovely experiences. I find them to be very bonding. Now here's another version of a psilocybin journey. So usually ceremonial retreats will have 2 psilocybin experiences. Like a 5-day retreat will have 2 experiences. And the way I like to say it, I like to say the first journey is kind of like tilling the soil and planting the seed. And the second journey is where that seed starts to grow. Whatever analogy you need for the first one being a little bit of preparation and the second one where things kind of start to speed up and happen. So this is an example of them at night during their second ceremonial journey. And you see what I should probably point out is that they do have little buckets. Every retreat should have a little bucket in case your stomach gets a little upset, and tissues. I don't know if there's ever been a journey where I haven't cried at some point. So I always have my tissues ready. So that's what you're seeing. And I think because it's at night, you'll also see some blankets so that they can cuddle up. And then, a lot of ceremonial and tourism retreats will add on some version of DMT. My first psilocybin retreat did that with regular DMT. I had an incredible spiritual experience. I did like 6 sessions of DMT. I had psilocybin and then 6 sessions of DMT and, had a lovely spiritual experience. In this instance, they're using 5-MeO, which is considerably deeper than regular DMT. 5-MeO is the synthetic molecule to the bufo, the toad venom. I don't know what they're using here, if they're using 5-MeO, if they're using the toad venom. 5-MeO for veterans, there's a lot of anecdotal out there that, if you had especially like one combat mission that is just haunting you, 5-MeO or bufo can really, really help. What my therapist likes to say is that when you've done a bit of medicine, your subconscious is kind of dilated and it is ready for deeper work. Think of the soil's already been kind of broken up. It's ready to have more work done to it for planting or for fertilization. I'm doing the best I can. Can you tell I do not have a green thumb? So that's why very often in these retreats, you'll have the 2 psilocybin journeys. And then at the end, you'll have the option to do a 5-MeO or a bufo journey. They only last about an hour. You'll see that everybody's kind of around this person to protect him because you very much get an ego death depending on the dosage of 5-MeO or bufo, and you can flail your arms. So it's very customary to have a couple of people around you to make sure that you stay protected. And it's very, very powerful for healing, really powerful. Usually completely optional though. You do not have to do it. I find 5-MeO and bufo to be incredibly healing for trauma. And then lastly, everybody left. One person had difficulty with the journeys and actually came home and went back on antidepressants. Totally, totally fine. A fantastic reminder that psychedelic work is not for everyone. And it's not for everyone at certain times in their lives. Like that person who went home to go back on, antidepressants, it doesn't mean in 5 years or 3 years that person won't be ready. You never really know. But I'm really glad it highlighted the choice that person had and said, no, wait, you know what? This was a little too intense. I need a little bit more time. Now, this picture, though, this is the virtual integration session that kind of closes out the entire ceremony. Again, on my ceremonial retreats I've gone to, you had the opening Zoom session where everybody got to meet each other before we saw each other in person. We did all the things during the ceremony. We came home, and then we kind of had a closeout of, everyone's been home for a week or two. How's your integration going? And hey, here's all my contact information if you didn't get it before. And hey, you know what? If you want to have another one, if we really liked each other well enough, you want to have another session, let's go ahead and plan it. That's pretty much how that goes. So there you go, Anderson. I helped you out there. I kind of broke down and explained what was happening during the psilocybin journey. I think the video did a great job of giving just enough of an overview to show how veterans can progress from, I had some really painful stuff. I had to then work through it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a joyride. This was not fun recreational drugs. This was hard stuff I had to process. And hey, now I'm feeling better. And then to have the interview at the end about, where the Veterans Affairs is and where they are with their research, I thought was also super appropriate. So there you go. I hope this helps. If at any point you're thinking about retreats, feel free, grab this video and do a little reminder so you know what to expect. If you want to know about my story of therapy, which was very different than a ceremonial experience that I just explained, head on over to Amazon where I have my memoir, Rescuing Jill. I also have my intention setting workbook that can help you if you decide to go on a retreat. Let me think. Head on over to thejourneysage.com, tons of resources, also some resources for finding retreats. And with that said, until next time, take care.